So hi everyone, welcome to session 2. My name is Junyi and I'm a PhD student at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. I will be chairing this session with Galen and Esther Chen. This session will have two talks, one invited talk, which is 25 minutes, followed by a 5 minutes Q&A, and then a contributed talk, which is 12 minutes plus 3 minutes of question. And if you have questions, still, please either send in the chat or raise hands during the Q&A session and wait until to be called upon. And our next invited speaker is Professor Qiming Shao. Qiming Shao, he received his bachelor degree from Tsinghua University and his PhD from UCLA. And now he's an associate professor at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. His lab aims to realize energy and time-efficient hardware using spintronics and quantum material for physical and quantum intelligence. Today, he will present about Spintronics for unconventional computing. And with that, I'll hand it over to Professor Shao.
Okay, thank you, Jing, for the kind introduction. I'm very happy to have the chance to share our recent work at this IEEE Around the Clock, Around the Globe conference. So I assume that can hear me clearly, right? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so today my topic will be on spintronics for unconventional computing. So I am from the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So actually here I have two pictures of our campus. So it's near the ocean, so it has very nice, also near the mountain. If you get a chance, please visit us. So I will first start with the foundation cells for scalable integration. I will introduce why we care about these foundation cells and how they can be used to guide your design for the computing applications. Then I will introduce a few applications of this concept. First, I will talk about application in the cryogenic computing. Then I'll talk about how to improve the accuracy. Finally, I'll talk about some things that can leverage the hybrid dynamics to achieve very high performance computing. So we all know the great Moore's law. Okay, the number of transistors actually doubles every 2 years. Okay, in the original statement, later changes to 1.5 years. We also have a lot of great Moore's law, I mean, a scaling law for the memory bits. So you can see that since the beginning of the hard disk drive, so the number of density, okay, the bits has increased by 10 to the power 9, and thus the cost has been reduced by 10 to the power 9. So with this tremendous reduction in the cost, we can store a lot of data in a very cost-effective way. So we have a lot of data so that we can enable data-driven AI algorithms. So for the conventional general purpose computers, we have this kind of very nice model for this computing. For example, we have the Turing machine have combinatorial logic. So basically you have the bits and you talk about how to combine them to achieve different kind of logical functions sequentially and combinatorily. Then we achieve this kind of implementation by carefully designed architecture. We can have the volume architecture. We have like a control unit, a logical unit as a separate memory unit. It's very efficient that you can actually get the information from the memory unit and then do the computation in the logical unit. After you get the computational result, you can actually send it back to memory unit. Okay, for this kind of loop, you can have a general purpose computing. It can, I mean, you also have a logical circuit in the foundational level. In the end, you implement this kind of system on the silicon substrate. And in the past 70 years, the silicon substrate technology has improved very, very dramatically. And then you have very advanced ones with very small feature size. So you may say that, okay, we already have such a powerful general purpose computer. Why do we care about other kinds of computing, right? So we have some computational hard problems that is very hard for the conventional computer to solve. So one kind is the rule-based, but it's too complicated. For example, we talk about the integer factorization, right? So it's easy to multiply two integers together to get a final number, but it's very hard to actually do a large number and factorization, and that's the foundation for the encryption algorithms. Similarly, we have the complementary optimization and quantum simulation. They are intrinsically hard due to the nature of the problems. There are a lot of kind of problems which are human intelligence tasks, and we now know, and it's very easy for human to actually recognize the cat or dog, but it's hard for computer to do it in the early days. Of course, people have invented new kinds of algorithms to handle this kind of hard problems. For example, when we talk about quantum simulation for Feynman proposed that you can use the quantum computer to simulate the quantum physics. And that paper, he also mentioned that you can use like other physics-inspired computing machines, such as IC machine, probabilistic machine, to actually solve some problems that intrinsically related to this kind of dynamics. Later, Peter Shao proposed that you can use a quantum computer to solve some real-life problems, not only quantum problems, such as the integer factorization. So this excited a lot of interest in studying quantum computing and quantum information science. As a result, recently the quantum information scientist has won the Nobel Prize in Physics 2022. Also this year, the Nobel Prize in Physics was awarded to the circuit quantum mechanics. It's in a very large scale. For the AI-based case, for the human intelligence tasks, people leverage the AI, artificial intelligence, or deep learning more specifically. And the pioneers have won the Turing Prize in 2018. Last year, So last year, Hinton and Hopfield has won the Nobel Prize in Physics. So physics, so this kind of deep learning draw the analogy from biology, but it's very different from the biology now. So I will introduce the best idea of this AI computing later and how we can accelerate this kind of computing in hardware. So these tasks are challenging for conventional computer because their computation time will scale exponentially with the size of the problem. And one problem for AI is like this one, it's data intensive. The data storage unit is very slow, and the logic unit is very fast. However, you need to constantly load the data from the hard disk to the logic unit and do a simple calculation. Then you need to store the intermediate result to the memory unit. It takes a lot of time and energy. The reason we cannot store all the data on the chip because you have very limited memory capacity for this kind of on-chip memory. It's like megabytes. So it's far from the required capacity such as gigabyte or even terabyte. So we need to have better AI algorithms, better systems to suit the AI algorithms. So people talk about unconventional computing. So one is the AI computing, or in general, like neuromorphic computing. So then you have all kinds of neuromorphic circuits, such as AN, artificial neural network, that relies on the matrix vector multiplication, and it takes analog values into the AN and generates the output after the nonlinear function. Similarly, you have S spiking neural network. So you take spikes and then take a weighted sum for these spikes and then have the neuron to actually generate the output spikes. So for the quantum computing, you have the very different fundamental unit, the qubit quantum bit model. So you implement model, you have all kinds of circuits to achieve it. And in the end, people have investigated how to use superconducting materials, maybe silicon materials and photonics to achieve it. Similarly for the AI computing, so you have the silicon plus 2D materials, Spintronics, photonics. So in our focus, we will focus on silicon plus Spintronics. And we draw the attention or the idea from the memory. For the memory, you have a very nice hierarchy based on their memory capacity and speed. And at the very fundamental level, you can see a very repetitive pattern. For the SRAM, you have 6 transistors. For the emerging long-volatile memory, you have this 1T, 1 transistor, 1 bit, 1 R, 1 MTJ structure. So this kind of memory cells are intrinsically analog. You need to actually read and write analogically. So you have a decoder and a multiplexer to actually address individual memory cells. And after you get the signal out, you need to actually set the amplifier or ADC to convert it to digital signal. Digital signal, and then you have eventually the digital input, digital output. So everything can be actually scaled to a very large size. So similarly, okay, we actually look at into the computing units. You will realize that for the computing units, similar. For the general central processing unit, you have arithmetic units. They just repeat a lot of kind of errors. And for the GPU, you have a lot of CUDA cores to handle all the matrix vector multiplication and this kind of rendering at the same time. So it accelerates the computing efficiency. And for TPU, they are tensor processing units. They are the fundamental core. They actually bring the memory more close to the computing units as they execute the multiply accumulate units, this IMAC operations, and they have this kind of symbolic array structure. In the end, they accelerate this kind of AI applications. For our Spintronics front-end cells, we combine these fundamental devices. They are not only for memory applications, they are also for computing. Okay, and we will talk about the computing in today's seminar, today's talk. So in the end, okay, you have analog signal for the control, maybe for the input to the analog device and the analog device to the output. Okay, so and for the in the end, you have everything digital. So you have digital interface to this analog nature of this Spintronics device array. So with this digital input or digital output, we believe that it can be scaled up to a very large capacity in an easy way. Okay, in an easy way. So and this CMOS devices or this Spintronics devices are easily CMOS integrated. So that you can leverage the silicon platform to do all the digital tasks, to control data flow, to reconfigure the computational capacities. Besides this individual scaling up with the single functions, we will show that Spintronics function cells can have a lot of functions. Okay, why can they have a lot of functions? This is rooted in the rich dynamics of the Spintronics devices. For example, okay, if you formulate the Spintronics dynamics LLG function into the Manresa function, you will be able to see the final dynamics of this different kind of input. Okay, when the input doesn't change, okay, you can have the steady dynamics. Okay, here you actually have a writing process. Then you change from 0, 1 or 1 to 0, right? So this is used mostly for the memory. And you can also have this oscillatory dynamics by injecting DC input. You can actually have oscillatory dynamics and you detect this through the microwave the spectrum. You can also have stochastic dynamics with different mechanisms such as noise-induced some fluctuation or this kind of voltage-driven magnetic entropy VCMA switching. So if you have more than more than one MGA devices, or you have alternating input, you can even have a chaotic dynamics that it can maybe used for some chaos assisted computing. So I will actually introduce 3 simple foundation cells. The first one is the cryogenic computing. So why do we care about cryogenic computing? It's related to quantum computing. Okay, so people have demonstrated very impressive results on these quantum processors. However, if you look at the fundamental hardware, you will see that for the original cycle mode processor done by Google, for the 54 qubits, you need to have 205 cables. So if you count all the numbers, you will see that for individual qubit, you need to have like a control signal flux line, and you have some just coupler for the 2 qubit gate. So in that, you have more than 3N cables. If you imagine that you have 1 million qubits, you have 3 million cables. That's a lot possible. So people have already proposed solution, cryogenic CMOS. They have been utilized to do this kind of single processing, quantum control, multiplexing, demultiplexing. What about some emerging applications? So people have shown that you can use AI reinforcement learning to help with quantum error correction. So quantum error correction means that you want to use the different features within the subsystem to actually help improve the lifetime of the one particular qubit. In the end, you can achieve the better lifetime for the overall system. So if you can achieve this kind of better performance, better lifetime, it means that you have achieved the break even. So this is the case for this particular paper. So this is the qubit cavity system. This is for 1 qubit. So you have room temperature GPU and a very low temperature quantum processor. You have a lot of delay, right? So imagine I have 1 million qubits. How can you control them with such a meter-long cable? So that people think about cryogenic in-memory computing, then you actually bring your AI agent very close to this qubit chips. So then you can have minimum delay and energy consumption. So we need to find a very good energy efficient cryogenic memristors. And I have been working on magnetoplan insulator for my PhD. So then I realized that for this magnetoplan insulator, they have carrier state. So they naturally have very large alarm cell resistance. This is very different from conventional heavy metal and ferromagnetic bilayers. So you have like only a few ohms or even a few milliohms. So here you have kilo ohms, tens of kilo ohms. Okay, it can be as large as 25 kilo ohms. On the other hand, it can be actually written very efficiently. You can inject current, and then you generate spin current through the spin locking, and you can achieve the magnetic switching with relatively low current density. So with this kind of write and read, then we can characterize the behaviors. So you can see that you have multiple states for this micro size devices, and their reading are also very stable. So they behave like the memristor. So it's magnetoplan insulated topological memristors. So I will skip the write-read distribution, and you can read our recently published papers for details. So one concern is about scaling, right? So far it's micrometer size devices. How can we scale to a small device? So we use EBL to fabricate a 120 nanometer by 200 nanometer device. We still observe the multi-domain behaviors. So the domain size can be, the maximum is 40 by 40 nanometer. So it's pretty scalable. So similar results have been shown in literature. So with the 4 devices, okay, we actually can only demonstrate a very simple task, and we apply the current to tune the magnetic resistance, and then the resistance, and then we read the Hall voltage, and then we do the summation in the external microcontroller. Okay, so then we can actually effectively classify the iris dataset, flower dataset. We have done many tests, and we show that the result of accuracy fluctuating, and the best result is the closed software accuracy, and the detection of the accuracy is due to the writing inaccuracy. So then actually we have tried to actually do the summation back operation in the hardware itself. So we originally actually thought that it could be like this way, and then we did it with the MCU summation externally. Later, through simulation, we realized that actually the Hall current summation is the best strategy. Okay, so you can electrically perform the summation using Kirchhoff current law, and it does not actually decay. The current does not decay over the power line, this line. We experimentally demonstrated the current summation in 3 devices. So you can see that this is the Hall voltage. You can also get the Hall current. So apply the input current, then you can have the Hall current. If you have 3 Hall current collected in the parallel, then you can actually do the summation, okay, all together, okay, summation all together. So this is a Hall current in parallel that together, and then you have this kind of result. With this result, we have done the simulation in hardware, and also we have done the benchmark for the large-scale AI computing. So one of the important features for this kind of Hall effect-based neural network is the bipolar nature, right? For the conventional MRM or the RM or other memory technology, you only have positive weight. For this MTI, you are based on the Hall resistance. You have naturally positive and negative resistance. So we show that this floating point neural network is much better than the unipolar one. So also demonstrate the relevance using quantum controls task. You have 1000, later you want to change it to 0111. Okay, so we implement this hardware, okay, simulation using the MTM, and then we demonstrate that you have actually very close performance to the floating point, the software level. The training process is also stable than the unipolar one. So through our work, we show that, okay, we bring this inference agent near the qubit processor. We still have the delay for the training, okay, because we do the training in the GPU outside. Later, we want to actually implement everything in the low temperature so that we have minimum delay and in both training and inference. So that's for the very simple tasks, and we do the project in hyper simulation. Later now, we will talk about large-scale implementation using commercially available MTJs. So to implement this kind of in-memory computing using commercially available MTJs, one challenge is variation. So you have device-to-device variation. Okay, for different devices on the chip, you may have different conductors. And for some memory technology, if you write it many times, they will have drift. We have investigated the unique, the variation inside our commercially available MTJs, and we reveal a very unique pattern. And the short conclusion is that we can build a digital twin for MTG, and then we can do off-chip training to achieve on-chip performance. So we collaborate with the Global Foundry in Singapore, and you have they have shared the data on this large-scale memory cells. Okay, you can see you have the variation for device to device. And we also characterize a lot of cycle variation. You can cycle variation very minimal. And if we study many devices, and after write a read for 10 to the power 6 cycles, 1 millicycle, you can see the resistance remain almost exactly the same as before. So you have finite device variation, but you have negligible cycle variation. Of course, the device is very stable. So then we can do actually the conductance mapping, okay, by using a low resolution ADC, that we can actually do the off-chip training with this digital twin concept. And later, after we trained on the off-chip, as then we can apply it to on-chip array, and we don't need to do further training anymore. You can see that transfer curve, the MAC transfer curve becomes much lighter if you have this kind of adaptive quantization. Okay, so the result will be much more accurate. So you have less error by leveraging this kind of intrinsic variation within the device array. So we scaled to we do a large scale benchmark with MList and CFA. You can see that the result here, the adaptive quantization is very close to in situ. In situ means that we do on-chip training. We apply the weight to the device array, and we do updates so that we can accommodate the device variation on the chip. So that's the best strategy, but it will sacrifice the device cycle because you may need to have 10 to the power 4 cycles to finish this training. Okay, for our dynamic quantization, you don't need to do it, and you have achieved a very good result as compared with the in situ one. So far, we still only talk about the stable dynamics, right? So the MTJs or the MTIs are very stable after you stop the input, right? So I will show that for some cases, you can use the leverage dynamics to achieve very good performance. So we are in a generative data AI era, okay? So you have image generation, video generation, and all the foundation for this kind of AI is the stochastic differential equation. So we have the drift part that determines the flow, and the diffusion part that actually increases the richness of the generative data, okay? So this can be modified, modeled using the neuron ODE, okay, neuron SDE or neuron ODE. Okay, so this stock generation will leverage the pseudo-random number for the current algorithms. If you can use the intrinsic, okay, true random numbers, it can improve the performance potential. So far, all the probabilistic computing leverage more or less like this kind of framework. You generate the random numbers, then you need to sample the analog, the output, and generate digital sequence, and you need to transfer this kind of digital random bits to the computer units and do the computation. So it reminds us about this kind of bottleneck for the mononomial architecture, right? You have memory bottleneck. Now you have the bottleneck for the probabilistic bits, okay? So the separation will introduce the bottleneck. How can we avoid this kind of bottlenecks, right? So can we actually achieve this kind of in-memory probabilistic computing using our MTJ devices? So we have the in-memory computing for deterministic part. That's no problem, right? So we have very stable MTJs. So and you can have a differential pair to have the positive and negative values. So you have two devices to achieve positive and negative values. So you can use the voltage to write the state. You have a large voltage to write it. On the other hand, okay, so if you apply the voltage, okay, with a certain pulse duration, you can actually have a probabilistic switching of these bits. Okay, as that you can have probabilistic output. So now we propose the concept of probabilistic differential pair, and if you apply a large pulse, to achieve the probability switching, then have 4 possible states. If they are switched, okay, so you will have this kind of 0, okay, output current. Okay, if it does not switch, then you have the original state. So this kind of 0 output achieves the initial Monte Carlo drop collect. Then you have this kind of effective cutoff of the weight. So we collaborate with the company. They have a large scale the standalone devices and the small integrated devices. Okay, so we measure the standalone devices. You have varialized TMR. You have across different arrays, so they have a consistent performance. You have the device variation. We show that still you have the enough margin for this kind of 1 and -1, and you also have drop this kind of collect for the 0, 1. So for the switching, it's naturally probabilistic. Okay, it changes with the voltage and the pulse width. Fix the pulse width by changing the voltage. You can achieve different switching probabilities, and we leverage at the 50% switching probability. So that's the standalone devices. Also for the on-chip one, you have we have a lot of devices and on-chip control. You achieve similar performance. Okay, it's a worse switching dynamics, but still you can have 50% switching probability. So I want to highlight that this is neural network approach. You do not need to have a very accurate control of the switching probability for each devices. Here, I will skip the quality of the random number generation due to the time limit. I will finally talk about the advantage. Okay, so advantage comes from 2 aspects. One is the in situ PBT architecture, another emerging memory technology. For the in situ one, you don't need to. You will have a 6 higher throughput, and because in memory in situ you don't need to have additional memory cost, area cost, and you also achieve better like area save area. So here is software benchmark, right? We do different things that Bayesian neural network. We actually do the drop collect, but we achieved a very good actually ascertain prediction, and in the end, okay, benchmark against the software one, and that we generate this varialized digits. And we benchmark with the standard software case. You see that okay, the results are very similar. It shows that the hardware implementation can also give you good accuracy. So I want to acknowledge the support from my students, collaborators, friends. So they have done all the work. Okay, I'm here to just to present them. So I think that's all for my talk. Okay, I think I overall a bit. So any questions? Oh, I see the raised hand.
Oh, I think Kuma, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for your nice presentation. And I have a simple question. So what features of Spintronics device make them suitable for unconventional computing compared to charge-based CMOS?
So your question concerns about the difference between this Spintronics based and the charge based.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think they don't have a big difference. Okay, so eventually, okay, here as this figure shows, right? No matter charge based or Spintronics based, you need to convert into something that's CMOS. I can understand. So most likely you just read the voltage, read the current, or read the resistance. So in this sense, they don't have difference. The key difference for Spintronics devices, they have very rich dynamics. Okay, with very simple devices, very compact form. Even for a single MTJ, you can achieve all kinds of dynamics. For other memory technology, I think they are hard to achieve it with only their memory devices. Okay, but for MTJs, you can achieve all the dynamics. Yeah.
Hi, thank you.
Okay, Nuno, you can go next.
Thank you. And thank you very much for the very nice talk. I have 2 questions. I believe they're quite fast. One is more in the beginning of your talk, as the general idea. For power efficiency, do you believe that the bottleneck it's really on the device, so hardware level, or is there still a lot of effort that can be done in the algorithm as well?
Okay, that's a very good question. I think there are now 2 code, right? So there are a lot of space from bottom, you still can improve the devices to improve performance, as we show for the magnetic topological insulator case. On the other hand, you also have a lot of opportunity from top. So even with the same devices, you can actually utilize its like different dynamics or do the computing in a more smarter way. You can save energy and improve the performance too. So I believe you have to do software hardware co-design these days to actually have a more realistic result for the applications. So I think you need to consider both from bottom and top. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's very nice for probabilistic computing. We can make use of MTJs for also new algorithms that cannot be done with conventional CMOS. And also for your work on VCMA. So the last part, I know the samples are from Global, so of course that they are very good. But I was wondering about stray field variation, because of course resistance variation is very small, but the stray field would be very large that can compromise VCMA. Am I right?
Okay, so first I want to clarify the VCMA devices are not from Global Foundry. Global Foundry one are the SPD. They are the previous one. This VCMA device is for the instant. Okay, so I have to say they also don't have the magnetic hard layer. So in the end, so you will have variation. That's the reason you see that. Okay, so this you have variation. Yeah, but the good thing actually we recently realized that you have probability switching, right? So even you don't, I mean, for the memory devices, you want to have a 99% of switching probability. But for probability switching, you don't. Even you have variations, right? We actually have a new result, some new result. We will probably publish soon. Okay, we actually can accommodate. Okay, compensate all the variations, either the device variation and the switching probability curve variations, and then we can still achieve some decent performance. Yes, that's a problem we need to overcome. Yeah, you are right. Yeah, that's something we need to overcome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, are there any other questions? If not, all right, let's thank Professor Shao again, and we'll move
thank you.
forward.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.